My grandparents forced me to abandon my disabled brother for a multi-million-dollar trust. Years later, I discovered the lie, and now I'm burning their empire to the ground. The contract felt heavier than a tombstone. It was 8 pages of dense, legal jargon, but the words that mattered burned on the first page. I, Chloe Reed, would relinquish all parental rights and legal guardianship of my brother, Liam Reed. I would agree to never see, speak to, or attempt to contact him again for the rest of our natural lives. In exchange, my maternal grandparents, the formidable Edwards dynasty, would establish a multi-million-dollar trust to ensure his lifelong care in the finest private facility money could buy. My grandmother, Beatrice, said, her voice as crisp and cold as winter air. "It's the only way, Chloe. He requires a level of care you simply cannot provide. We are offering him a future. You are his past." I was 20 years old. Our parents had died in a car crash 2 years prior, leaving me as the sole caregiver for my 16-year-old brother, Liam. Liam was born with a severe form of cerebral palsy. He was nonverbal, confined to a wheelchair, and needed round-the-clock care. He was also the sun in my universe. His laugh was the sound of pure, unfiltered joy, and the way he'd rest his head on my shoulder was the only comfort I had left in the world. But my grandmother was right about one thing: I couldn't provide. I had dropped out of college, worked 2 minimum-wage jobs, and we lived in a cramped second-floor apartment that was a daily struggle for his wheelchair. The final blow came when Liam developed a respiratory infection that landed him in the ICU. The doctor told me he needed specialized equipment at home that I could never afford, so I had swallowed my pride and called the grandparents who had disowned my mother for marrying my unsuitable father and had never once met their grandchildren. They agreed to a meeting, and this was their solution. Not help, not support, a transaction. They wanted to buy my brother, erasing me, the last trace of their daughter's mistake, from the equation. My grandfather, Arthur, added, tapping a gold pen on his mahogany desk, "He will have the best doctors, the best therapists. He will be an Edwards, as he should have been all along. You will be free to live your own life, unburdened." Unburdened. The word was a slap in the face. Liam was never a burden. He was my heart. But as I looked at their stone-cold faces, I saw no room for negotiation. This was their price. So, with tears blurring the ink, I signed away the only family I had left. I sold my soul for my brother's future. The goodbye was the single most brutal moment of my life. I held him in my arms in his hospital room, memorizing the feel of his hair, the shape of his hands. I whispered that I loved him more than anything, that I was doing this for him, and that he was going to a wonderful new place. He couldn't understand the words, but he felt my tears on his cheek and made a small, distressed sound. A nurse came in with a representative from the private facility. They wheeled him away, and a part of me died in that sterile, white room. For 5 years, I kept my promise. I moved to a different state. I put myself through night school, haunted by the feeling that I had to become someone worthy of the sacrifice I'd made. I graduated with a degree in investigative journalism, driven by a need to uncover truths and fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. I never searched for him. I had to believe he was happy, thriving, surrounded by the best care imaginable. The pain was a constant, dull ache, but I told myself it was worth it. The lie began to unravel with a random Facebook post. A charity group in my old state posted a photo gallery from their recent visit to a state-funded care facility, the Northwood Assisted Living Center. And in the background of one of the photos, sitting alone in a corner, was Liam. He was thinner. His hair was unkempt. He was wearing clothes that were clearly too big for him. But it was him. I knew the curve of his cheek, the way his head tilted to the side. It was him, but he wasn't in a world-class private institution. He was in a notoriously understaffed, underfunded state home. A cold dread, sharp and suffocating, seized me. I threw up in my bathroom sink. My promise, my sacrifice, my entire world, it was all a lie. I took a leave of absence from my job, emptied my savings account, and drove the 10 hours back to my old hometown. Getting into Northwood wasn't hard. They were desperate for volunteers. I signed up to read to the residents, disguising myself with glasses and a different hair color. The place was as bad as I had feared. It smelled of bleach and despair. The staff were overworked and exhausted, and I saw the truth of my grandparents' betrayal up close. Liam was often left in his room for hours, parked in front of a television. The specialized communication device I had spent months fundraising for before our parents died was gone. He was clean and fed, but he was neglected. The light I remembered in his eyes was gone, replaced by a vacant, listless stare. He didn't recognize me. My heart shattered into a million pieces. I quit the volunteer position and started digging. As a journalist, I knew how to find information people wanted to keep hidden. I pulled property records, tax filings, and corporate documents. There was no multi-million-dollar trust. They had set up a meager fund, just enough to pay the state facility's basic fees. The rest of the money? The fortune they'd sworn would be for Liam? They had used it to buy a vineyard in Napa and a penthouse in New York. They had bought luxuries with the price of my brother's happiness and my unending grief. The fury that replaced my grief was volcanic. They hadn't just lied to me. They had stolen my brother's life. My first move was to find an ally. I tracked down a nurse, a kind woman named Maria, who had recently been fired from Northwood for complaining about the conditions. She remembered Liam. Maria said, her eyes sad. That poor boy. He came in so bright, but he's fading. His grandparents send a check, but they never visit. They pay the bare minimum. No therapy, no new equipment, nothing. She agreed to give me a sworn affidavit. That was my first weapon. My next weapon came from a disgruntled former financial manager for the Edwards family. It took weeks of convincing, but I finally got him to leak the documents proving the fraudulent trust. He showed me the initial paperwork, and then how the funds were rerouted to their personal accounts. I had my evidence. I had my witnesses. Now, I needed a stage. The Edwards family hosted an annual, high-profile charity gala for the city's elite. It was their crown jewel, the event that cemented their reputation as philanthropists and pillars of the community. This year, it was being held at the city's most prestigious art museum. And I was going to crash the party. I gave the entire story, the contract, the photos of Liam, Maria's affidavit, the financial records to my most trusted colleague at a national news outlet, with an embargo set to lift at exactly 9 p.m., the night of the gala. I walked into that gala wearing a blood-red dress. I didn't hide. I walked right through the center of the room until I was standing in front of my grandparents, who were holding court by the main stage. My grandmother's eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their icy depths. Beatrice hissed, "Chloe? What are you doing here? You violated the agreement," I replied, my voice loud enough for everyone around us to hear. "The agreement you violated first? The one where you promised to care for your grandson, or the one where you stole his money to buy a vineyard?" Just then, every phone in the room began to buzz and chime. My colleague had published the story. The headline was devastating. Philanthropic power couple accused of fraud. Neglect in disabled grandson's care. A wave of gasps and whispers swept through the ballroom. People were staring at their screens, then up at my grandparents, their faces masks of horror and disgust. Arthur turned a pasty white. Beatrice looked like she might faint. Their perfect world was imploding in front of their entire social circle. I leaned in close to my grandmother. I whispered, "I gave you my whole world for him, and you gave him nothing. Now, I'm going to take everything from you." I turned and walked out of the museum, leaving them to be devoured by the scandal they had created. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Adult Protective Services launched a full-scale investigation. The IRS audited their entire financial history. They were stripped of their board positions, and their names were scrubbed from hospital wings and university buildings. They were social pariahs. But I wasn't done. With the evidence I had, I petitioned the court for emergency guardianship of Liam. Armed with the public outcry and undeniable proof of their fraud and neglect, the judge didn't hesitate. The contract I had signed 5 years ago was voided on grounds of fraudulent inducement. I walked out of that courthouse and went straight to Northwood. This time, I didn't need a disguise. I walked in with the court order in my hand. When Liam was wheeled out to meet me, his eyes were dull. I knelt in front of his chair and took his hand. I said, my voice thick with tears, "Hey buddy, it's me. I'm so sorry I was gone for so long. But I'm back now. I'm never leaving you again." For a long moment, there was nothing. Then, slowly, his fingers tightened around mine. He lifted his head, and his eyes focused on my face. A tiny, hesitant smile touched his lips. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The real multi-million-dollar prize wasn't a trust fund. It was that smile. I had my brother back. I had my family back. And I had left his captors to rot in the ruins of the life they had built on lies.